मजबूत नहीं है, so please forgive me. I'll speak in English. And before I talk about what we are doing right now in education, I want to tell you about why we got here. Why did we start working on education, and what prompted us, what inspired us to work on education? So I used to work in a corporate in the corporate world for a bunch of years after my post graduation, and I was troubled by this question that you can see on the screen right now, that हम अपने आप को बहुत intelligent मानते हैं as a species, and we call our birth a privileged birth and a bunch of things, but then how did we let the design of our society go so wrong as to allow suffering from scarcity in a world of plenty? How did that happen in the first place? And I knew that sitting in the cubicle in a company like GE, I cannot find these answers. All I was doing was spending 12 irreversible hours out of my each irreversible day of my only life trying to make a rich company richer. And that was the net effect of my life. तो मैं सोचा कि अब जाते हैं अपना देश देखते हैं, क्योंकि अगर जवाब ढूंढना है, so we can only find it outdoors and not inside a cubicle. तो मैं गया travel करने, and I was an avid traveler, तो मुझे travel करना कुछ नई बात नहीं थी. So I decided I'll put two conditions for my travel. एक तो ये कि मैं अपने खाने में पैसे खर्च नहीं करूँगा खाने के लिए. So on my food I will not spend any money, and on my stay I will not spend any money. So just to make it interesting for myself, and within a couple of weeks I learned that cities make it impossible for you to live on those two conditions, right? And so out of desperation, I don't look like Bear Grylls and Man versus Wild and all of that. So I had to look for avenues to travel truly based on those two principles. So which meant that I had to at some point foray into a village, right? And it happened just outside of Hyderabad because my hunger was satiated by a couple, a very, very ripe old couple sitting in front of Birla Mandir in Hyderabad. They were from a village, and they said, our village would never have let you starve. And I thought, okay, if her words are true, then I should just try and go into a village and see. And as luck would have it, next day I was in a village because a trucker took me to a village, and I'll save you all those stories. And what started as an adventure taught me a lesson that within 15 minutes of entering that village, I had become a brother to someone. And I had become a son to someone else. And then people started offering me food. They started offering me place to stay, right? And without me even asking. Whereas on the other hand, I was getting desperate, I was getting hungry, nobody even cared. Right? And what I thought would be an adventure for like a couple of weeks or a month at the most, went on for 2.5 years. So rural India kept me going for 2.5 years. And at the end of the 2.5 years, I mean, I have lived in every state of the country, in the villages. I've eaten food in every state, villages in every state of the country. And no state, no village that I visited disappointed me in terms of not giving me food or a place to stay. And at the end of these 2.5 years, I kind of started getting very disillusioned by the idea of what is called rich, what is called poor. Right? On one hand, cities देखते हैं, for example in Delhi, Mumbai, wherever else we go, be it New York, London, wherever we go, the thing is that you have every possible expression of progress. वहाँ पे malls हैं, hospitals हैं, theaters हैं, universities हैं, सब कुछ है, but you don't have something. I mean, in the makeup of the city, you can't see a fellow human or another animal starving. वो दिखता नहीं है. We can't even see it, right? That doesn't make people who live in the city bad people, right? I'm not being a judge or a jury, but that's how it is. Life is designed that way in a city. Whereas in a village where you have none of these expressions of progress, मॉल नहीं है, थिएटर नहीं है, हॉस्पिटल नहीं है, कुछ नहीं है, बट वहाँ पे कुछ तो ऐसा है कि किसी और को भूखा नहीं जाने देते. So you call it generosity, you call it trust, you call it love, you call it kindness, you call it compassion, you call any of these, you call it love, you call it any of these, it doesn't matter what the name is, but they exist. And these are the values that make us human. Right? And if these are the values that make us human, why do we call the villages poor? Why do we call the cities rich? And what is the direction of our evolution? हम इस साइड जाएं या उस साइड जाएं? हमें do we at the end of the journey, do we have to be a place or a society in which everybody is kind, compassionate, generous, trusting, loving? Or do we build a society where there are walls all over the place and we don't really care about kindness and all these values that make us human? What are we really going after? So I could see the dichotomy, I could see an illusion in the definition of poverty and wealth, and we can debate it, but I started deciding कि मुझे poverty eradication में काम नहीं करना है, क्योंकि poverty का definition ही इतना गंदा है. It's only defined on the basis of how much money I have and how much money some other person doesn't have. ये नहीं देख रहा कि हम दोनों के बीच में similarity क्या है, हम कैसे एक ही हैं. So commonness ढूंढ नहीं रहे हैं, हम differences ढूंढ रहे हैं. ऐसे ही richness और poverty का definition बना है. मुझे उससे कुछ ताल्लुकात रखना नहीं था. Then what do I do? Right? I'd already traveled 2.5 years, been through every state. Then I had to think about, okay, what next now? And that's when I remembered what my martial arts trainer always used to tell us about the true purpose of martial arts. क्यों martial arts सीखते हैं? So it was neither about defending yourself, nor was it about defending other people who are weak. It is about creating a society where nobody has a reason to defend themselves. Because true strength is in not offending. So when there is no offense, defense is unnecessary. Right? That's the kind of society that we need to build. So I thought, if we are suffering from symptoms of the so-called poverty, instead of working on how do we cure those symptoms, how about we go to the root cause and figure out how can we build a society in which poverty it just can't exist. If it doesn't emerge, we don't have to eradicate it. And that was the inspiration. And then I thought, ये इन सब का जवाब कहाँ मिलेगा? Where can we find in this great country of ours? There must be some nook or corner जहाँ पे लोग ऐसे जी रहे हैं जिनके पास वो जवाब हो कि सोसाइटी कैसे डिजाइन किया जा सकता है, और वो बस बोल नहीं रहे हैं, वो ऐसे जी रहे हैं. And some wise man pointed me to the tribal areas कि those guys may not be able to say it to you. वो book और ग्रंथ नहीं लिखे हैं, but they live in a particular way, and if you actually see it with humility, probably you can understand how life was designed. What are the building blocks of design of a society? And I'll just give you a brief anecdote about my first interaction with a tribal leader. My hand was completely broken, the elbow. तो मैं ये ट्राइबल कॉलोनी पे गया था, एंड मैं उनसे पूछा कि यहाँ पे कोई इलाज कर सकता है. So they took me to this old man. He looked like Clint Eastwood from Hollywood. A homemade cigar or homemade whatever drink that he was having. वो मेरी तरफ इतना suspiciously देखता है और फिर बोलते हैं कि क्या कर रहे हो ये सब साइकिल वाइकिल में. Then I said I just wanted to silence him because there is still that ego, engineering, MBA, this, that, and all. And tribal healer ही तो है. And then I said मैं अच्छा ही ढूंढते जा रहा हूँ और ज्ञान ढूंढते जा रहा हूँ कि कैसे जिया जा सकता है. मैं सोचा वो बहुत अच्छा जवाब है, और वो आदमी मेरी तरफ ऐसे देखता है. So he smirks at me, and that hurts your ego, right? And then that was hurting more than my broken elbow all of a sudden. And then he started asking, अच्छा सोचो कि आपको ज्ञान मिल गया, क्या करोगे? तो मैं बोला कि आप इंटरनेट नहीं जानते हो, मैं उस पर जाके लिखता हूँ इसके बारे में और लोग पढ़ेंगे और बदलाव आएगा, ऐसा होगा उसको. आपको blogging के बारे में मालूम नहीं है ये सब मैं I just wanted to show him his ignorance and all these things. Then I get another smirk. This time he was louder, and then so it was very very humiliating. And then I asked him. No, before that he asked me. So what do you think? You're Amitabh Bachchan. Amitabh Bachchan. So it was his way of saying you can't do anything with all your travel. And later, I mean, what I realized is he applied oil and he treated me and all of that. He said, I cannot let you go till the time you're completely healed. So for 10 days, you'll stay in my house. House as in a little hut. And I stayed with him for the next 10 days. मैं उनसे पूछा कि तब आप हंसे क्यों? मेरा जवाब तो बहुत सही था मेरे हिसाब से. And then he said, looking for goodness in a world full of goodness is like going to a rose garden and saying, I'm looking for a rose. I just don't know what a rose is. So I'll keep spending my entire life looking for the rose in a rose garden. And I thought, this man is really wise, right? I'm engineering MBA, it's completely useless. And then I started asking him questions, about life and other things. And there began my best and most profound education. Not in my universities, not in my schools, not anywhere. And I started walking from the west all the way to the east. And this was after 2.5 years through the villages. And this time I had an agenda for my travel कि मुझे ये समझना है इन सब लोगों से मिलके कि एक समाज का डिजाइन के लिए फंडामेंटल्स क्या होते हैं. And with that, I understood as I went from the west to the east, living with so many tribes across. I mean, the whole belt is rich with ancient wisdom, practice of ancient wisdom, and it's not theory. Right? I learned that irrespective of which tribe you go to, they all live by 3 simple principles. You're going to prompt me when I'm running out of time.
No, we can have all time, please.
Okay. So, and so irrespective of which tribe, आप कौन सी भी tribe में जाएं, they live by the same 3 design principles. And this was my synthesis, my understanding. अगर कोई और जाता तो शायद उनको 9 दिखते principles, but I was happy with the 3. And the first one is a need for self-reliance with respect to their basic needs. The second one is interdependence. कि वहाँ पे कोई एक दूसरे से झगड़ के अपना स्वावलंबन they do not achieve that, right? They achieve it by depending on each other and respecting each other. So हम बाहर we call it the society is like a pyramid and all of that. There for the first time in my life I saw a society which is more circular, where everybody gets the respect when they're contributing something. They don't get respect because they're hoarding something. मेरे पास इतना पैसा है मुझे respect करो, वो नहीं होता. I'm a doctor and when I'm healing somebody is when I get the utmost respect, right? When I'm giving, when I'm contributing. So that is interdependence. And the third one and the most important one is a non-negotiable respect for what makes our life possible. Nature, soil, air, water, and all other living forms that make our life possible. हम सोचते हैं कि हम बहुत important है, but that 1 year through the tribal colonies taught me how insignificant our lives are. Right? We don't know. We don't look at the sun and say, "मुझे उपमा चाहिए तो उपमा नहीं आता." We don't know how to translate that cosmic intelligence to how we can nourish ourselves, right? But there are trees that can translate that intelligence. And then there are animals, the herbivores, then there are carnivores, then there are bees, there are butterflies, birds, bats. Without all these species working in something like a symphony or an orchestra, life wouldn't happen. I can't even get fresh air to breathe if all these guys go on a strike one day. What are we giving to the system? We as humans are only taking. right? We're not giving. And in most of the cities, we don't even give our shit. Right? We hoard that also. I'm sorry for the language, but it's the easiest word. So once I learned about those three principles, मुझे लगा कि I'm not a book writing guy, I'm not a filmmaker. I want to get hands-on with everything. I want to try everything. I want to question everything. I want to experiment with everything. And so I put those three principles. And because I had a problem with the nirvachan of poverty, I wanted to have a clear definition of what resilience means. And this is how we defined it. These three principles are from the titles. It's just that वो लोग 9 नए बेसिक नीड्स सोचते हैं, वो 3 सोचते हैं, 3 से भी कम सोचते हैं ज़्यादातर. But we added 9 because we are mod. हमें connectivity चाहिए, हमें energy चाहिए, हमें वो चाहिए, हमें ये चाहिए, clothing चाहिए. So we added 6 more and we made it 9 basic needs. And the whole idea was that we would depend on each other and we would not violate the structure of nature. No life form will be intentionally harmed, and in doing so, we gain self-reliance over these 9 basic needs. And that's how Proto-Village happened. Proto-Village stands for prototype of a resilient village. Before I bought the land, we bought the land as a family, and then we started working on the land. I interned with a farmer's family in that village called Teklodu. It's the second driest district. And their annual income when I first met them was 7,000 rupees. And I told them that in 6 months or 8 months, हम फार्मिंग कर देंगे, ये कर देंगे, वो कर देंगे, आपका इनकम बढ़ जाएगा. आप जो माइग्रेट होने का सोच रहे हैं, वो ख्याल बंद हो जाएगा. फिर अगर नहीं होंगे हम सक्सेसफुल, तो आप जहाँ मर्जी आप जाओ. They agreed. What I thought would happen in 6 months. I knew nothing about farming. I knew nothing about anything. I was an engineer, but I had no idea how to live. So उनके साथ शुरू हुआ था. It took us 4 years to make them completely self-reliant. We followed the same 3 principles, and they were making about 14,000 rupees every month at the end of 4 years. We did not harm anything. We depended on each other. More people came because they saw an idiot from the city trying to do all those things, and then people joined hands and volunteered from the village, and we built. So we built our first wind turbine there that generated electricity, and suddenly the family had electricity in their farm. They were farming, all of those things. They become self-reliant. But here is the
Sorry, one question I have might be I missed the transition from the wisdom and the pillars and everything. What was the problem? The problem was still about helping people in working on poverty, but in the other way. Is it like that?
No, it's more like, let's say, we heard the talk about Ayurveda on the day one. The thing is that if we work on the symptoms, which most of us are working on symptoms, the idea is that the disease continues.
Yeah. So what was the problem like? You looked at the farmers.
Yeah.
So the village, like what was the problem?
Yeah. So thank you for pointing out.
Yeah.
The way the tribal healer asked me those questions was, what makes our life possible? Soil, air, and water, and all other life. Right? That's one thing. Second, what makes our life worth living or meaningful? Uska answer tha sense of community. When there is goodness and when there is love and trust all around us, we don't have to try to be good anymore.
Yeah.
We'll be that anyway. Right? So in that, I learned that as long as we are able to build a beautiful community, a strong, happy community that focuses on preserving what makes our life possible, that is at the jud of the solution. I understood it. So after that family, interning with that farmer's family, we got land. The land is somewhere here. It is not the green patch. Yeah, there's a lake, and this is where we got the land. The villagers showed it, and we just picked it up. We had no idea. And this shows the the pinned area is how barren the land was when we got it. This was in 2014. And
how much land did you buy?
Sorry?
How much land?
We bought about 12.5 acres. Yeah, that was how much we could afford at the time. Okay.
I think.
Okay. All right. So this is how it looked on the ground. And the first things that we did was the first 6 to 8 months, all we did was digging all over the place. We got elders from the village to guide us how to do it, and then we just kept digging. And slowly the life came back, and the nature blessed us with rain that year. And there was abundant rainfall. We also, right from day one, we were not connected to electricity. So everything that we built in those 9 months, it was hot sun, there was not a tree shade to go under. रहने की जगह ही नहीं थी. We had built a small hut in which 12 other villagers used to live with us, right? So after we bought the land, we said we don't want to own the land. Come and own it with us. Let's all build a village. And then so 12 families moved in, and so this was almost after 1 year, right? 1 year almost after we bought the land.
Where is this place?
Anantapur.
This is in Pune. Yeah, Anantapur. It's about 100 kilometers from Bangalore.
Andhrapradesh.
Yeah, Bangalore, Karnataka.
It's in Andhra Pradesh near Bangalore.
Yeah, southern Andhra Pradesh, which is bordering Karnataka.
कर्नाटका के पास.
So we used to hold torches in our mouths and work in the night. So this was the largest wind turbine that we built. Everything in that picture is done by 12 workers. The fabrication of the turbine, the planning of the village, everything was done by us. And any buildings that you'd see, this is how we built them. These are all old rice bags, used rice bags. We filled the soil, we dug the soil, we put the soil into the bags, stacked them up like bricks, and we built the building. At that time, we didn't know what the hell we were doing. But after we built it, architects came to us and they told us that this is the largest earth-backed building in the whole country. We didn't know. And we just had fun building it. And that taught
Pillars and all the things, because the RCC work is there.
No, these are not RCC. These are the old cement bricks that were there in the village. So we use them as guideposts, and then eventually we just remove them. We don't need them. These are just bags.
वो आपने पहले लगाया फिर उसको हटाया.
हाँ.
Bind कर रहे.
Just to show us where to start.
Yeah, these are not cemented. We would just remove them.
RCC bricks.
at the end of it. So this was soil building and then lime plastered, and this is how the building finished. And those are all the people who worked on it. I mean, they're all family. And everything that you see, this is all lime plastered, and we learned how to do the lime plaster. Running around and figuring out how to do it. It was torturous in the sense that the mortar that we used to make by rolling, for 1 week, it would end up getting used in 2 hours. So it taught us a lot about life as well. And this is a picture from 2017. This is the amphitheater that we built. This is a community kitchen where we all cook and we all eat.
That's the first building towards.
Yeah, towards that side. And this is a hut in which our family lived. The animals lived here. We slept all over the place. We slept in on the overhead tanks.
थोड़ा बैकवर्ड के
Last leg.
बैक और बैक. सर ये आपने प्लास्टिक बैग पे प्लास्टर कैसे किया? ये पहला था ना ये?
हाँ.
फिर नेक्स्ट कीजिए. हाँ.
Line plus.
और इस पे लाइन प्लास्टर कैसे करें?
हाँ.
कैसे
हाँ,
किया?
उसमें वो चिकन मेश करके एक आता है. You just tie it to that. हाँ, wired mesh होता है. उसको लगा के फिर you can actually plaster it. But now we've learned that इसको हम गनी सैक से भी कर सकते हैं. जो जूट बैग्स होते हैं ना,
Bags होते हैं.
उससे कर सकते हैं. उसको खुद ही ट्रैक्शन इतना होता है कि आप लाइन डायरेक्टली अप्लाई कर सकते हैं.
चिपक जाता है.
बिल्कुल.
No need of
Make sure you do that because I did leave it and it got destroyed. I felt there. Because the rain came and we had that as a boundary line, the veranda's boundary line. The rain came and we didn't have the roof, we didn't have time to put the roof. It got washed away.
But you know, we can talk about it. I can tell you because our buildings which were exposed to rain for almost 4 years without getting roof, they survived. So absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure I must have made
Yeah,
good amount
we
of
can talk
mistakes.
about it. Yeah, for sure. So this was a building, and this is a half finished community kitchen where we all cook together and we all eat together, and nobody talks about caste system and nothing. Nobody asked that question at all. Yeah, I was called Dharamgrast in the village because somehow the villagers figured out that I was from a Brahmin family and all that. And then they were saying, "आप इसी इसमें से खाते हो, ये खाते हो, वो खाते हो." And then, but now everybody comes to the village and eats at the community kitchen itself, even the outsiders from other villages. And it's the same picture. You would see how barren this was. This is from a couple of weeks ago. And this is the finished community kitchen. All stones. This is the only building in the whole of Proto village where we built it with stones. Because villagers were giving us stones, we were building it with stones. And this is where the kids live, and this is what the Swada kids painted. They painted yeah.
The food is really delicious.
Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing food.
So, and this is one video. This is the neighbors. The land. What? So wherever you see brown is not Proto village. I'll just run this video. This is called Maya Bazaar. This is where our learning space is. यहाँ पे बच्चे they own the place, they learn there. This is how the land has become now. This is our handloom unit. This whole greenery is of Proto.
How many families
That's where
now
the-
stay there?
Sorry?
How many families stay there?
Now there are 30 people. 30 people who live there.
30 families.
No, 30 people.
30 people.
Yeah, 30 people who live there, and about 10 kids from the villages around. We are the only implants from outside, but otherwise everybody is from the villages around. So as we, and I'm happy to share with you that out of the 9 basic needs that I mentioned in the definition of resilience, we are self-reliant with respect to all of them right now. And as we were working towards self-reliance and we were building the prototype, मुझे लगा कि एक बहुत ज़रूरी एस्पेक्ट ये होगा कि हम इसको सेल्फ रेप्लिकेबल कैसे करें ताकि anybody who comes and sees the place knows how to do it, right, themselves and just go and do it. So then we started researching on how any good alternative in the history of mankind became mainstream. Right? Everything started as a fringe idea at some point. For it to become mainstream, what did it take? And that's something that all of us who are called alternative spaces should really think about. और मुझे बहुत वक्त लगा था पता करने में. Even now I don't claim to know it, but this is my guess after all the research, is that every idea that became mainstream fell at the intersection of 2 things: information and incentive. If we see a tree getting cut somewhere on our way, for example, we saw a beautiful tree in the morning, our heart will cry if we see such a tree getting cut, right? And so it means that the information that we have is that cutting the tree is bad. The guy who is cutting the tree or the girl who is cutting the tree would also know that that's not such a right thing to do, right? That's information. But where is the incentive? It's in cutting the tree. Lying is bad. Lying works.
Yeah.
Corruption is bad. Corruption works. So our wisdom tells us one thing, but we have built a society in which we get incentivized for doing exactly the opposite. So information and wisdom is in the domain of education. Incentive, which used to be spiritual in the olden days, it turned social in the medieval times, and now it is economic.
Very well put.
So the idea is, what if we build an education system that tells us what the right thing to do is, and an economic system that incentivizes them the moment they do the right thing. When I get incentivized for doing the right thing, I try to do it again. And if I get it the second time also, it becomes my habit. And when my neighbor sees me do it, he would also do it, right? That's how an alternative becomes mainstream. So we started wanting to work on rural economy, economic models because we are a prototyping space. We don't work on scaling, right? That's someone else's job. And we started prototyping the rural economic model on one hand, and we also started working on the rural education model. And when Meenakshi was earlier talking about why we should have a separate rural education model, I just want to spend a few minutes on why of that. Is that when I was traveling for those 3.5 years, every time there was, if we had to observe ecological sensitivity, as you traveled from cities to tribal communities, it was the highest in tribal communities. ये मेरा मट्टी है, मेरा पानी है, that kind of connection. Then slightly lesser in the villages, lesser still in towns, least in the cities. And so each step towards urbanization made us indifferent to our natural systems. Social cohesion, highest again in tribal communities, lesser in the villages, lesser still in towns, least in the urban centers. So, what is the idea of a good society? A good society is that which is built on healthy ecosystems, natural ecosystems, happy communities, and together they form what is called a good society. A good society is one that invests itself in creating happy communities that keep their natural ecosystems healthy. So ancient wisdom, or the indigenous wisdom that is called, is kind of an operating system of how to live in synergy with nature. Right? That is the knowledge. And that knowledge is not documented anywhere. Right? It was passed down as traditions. And those traditions are richly followed in the tribal areas, slightly vaguely followed in the villages. There's still the sanctuaries, but not as strong sanctuaries as tribals. But then, as it comes down to the cities, nothing exists. So this is where I began to understand what culture meant, because I had heard India is a country of diverse cultures and all of those, unity in diversity and all of those things. Beautifully said in so many books, but I never understood what the word meant. And the tribals helped me understand what that actually meant. Our culture is diverse, we all know it. Our culture is only as diverse as the terrain of the country. Right? You go to a desert, you see a different way of life. You go to a state with heavy rains, you see a different way of life. So our culture, the diversity that we attribute to it, is actually attributed to the knowledge that we require to exist in synergy with nature in that bioregion, which is unique. So as diverse as the terrains, so diverse will be our culture, right? And that knowledge is culture. Practice of knowledge that is applicable to that region is culture. So whenever we have one solution that kind of looks like it wants to transcend all cultural diversity, it doesn't work. So you have to have a framework that can be contextualized to any terrain. We can build frameworks, we can never build one solution that fits every place. And that's what we wanted to do. Because villages are one of the last repositories of that knowledge, we wanted to let villages remain, right? And I'll show you a slide that's it's like darkly comic. The problem with the status quo in education, you all know, I'll be speaking to the choir if I'm describing all of this. But confusion of purpose, it was spoken about on the day one, where people said that it has become a vehicle for monetary gain. Assessment measures functional expertise only. And on day one again, I heard Professor Kashyap talk about how we become what we measure. If we're measuring the wrong thing, we probably can't lead ourselves to a good society. So we completely ignore our capability to contribute positively to our communities and to our country. That's not assessed at all. It's only about functional expertise. method, heavy reliance on teaching and not learning. I got a little joke about this. Someone told me in Proto, is that a kid comes late to the school. So the teacher is obviously angry. He takes a stick and wants to beat the kid up for coming late. And then the kid has to think very quickly on his heel. So he says, मैं अपने कुत्ते को गाना सिखा रहा. And then the guy says, the teacher is surprised. He says, यार वो कैसे हो सकता है? ठीक है, class हो जाने के बाद I'll get all the class, the entire class to come visit you. You have to make it sing. He says, okay, at least I can survive for 1 hour. Then after the class, everybody is curious. They take all of them. They all go to the kid's house. And then there is the dog. Then teacher बोलता है कि यार उसको बोलो गाने के लिए. And then this guy says, sing. The dog howls and barks. Right, that's what a dog does. Then teacher is very disappointed, and so are all the kids. So the teacher asks, but you told that you taught. Then he says, I taught, but he did not learn. Right? That we need to shift the focus from teaching to actually being an environment where kids can learn, and do that with joy. And then the last thing which I find super critical is content versus context. We put a lot of emphasis on what they should learn, but we place very little interest in why is that even relevant to them. Right? How does context matter? Now, for example, if knowledge that the kids learn is not useful to their community, they, by the time they are 15, I mean, what's the difference between an urban kid and a rural kid? An urban kid grows up being exposed to a bunch of things. A rural kid grows up being exposed to his rivers, waters, mountains, deserts, forests, whatever. All of this nature and a beautiful social structure. Right? And when both of them go through the same one-shoe-fits-all system, by the time he or she is 15 years old, they are already disconnected with their village. Right? They don't care whether some mining is happening. Recently, I've seen in West Bengal, it was so disappointing last year that every tribal colony has a sacred grove, a sacred forest. Right? It's like 400, 500 years old, 700 years old trees are there in those sacred groves. Last year, they cut off the entire sacred grove for 4,000 rupees. Information, incentive. And that's how powerful incentive has become these days. So we need to keep, if we have to keep the villages, to keep the culture alive, we'll have to keep the love for the villages in the villagers' hearts. How can we do that when we have the same education for the village kids as it is for the urban kids? So what happens because of that is the indigenous wisdom, all the old people who hold all that wisdom, they die because there are no takers of that wisdom. Nobody cares about that wisdom. And because of that, ecological destruction, social disintegration, people become more and more vulnerable and helpless. So from being abundant producers, they become helpless consumers of charity. Right? And urban migration then looks like a legitimate solution. Right? अब यहाँ पे तो कुछ होने वाला नहीं है. Let's urbanize. Right? Or let's create pathways for them to move out of their villages to the cities. But again, we are looking at a symptom. The disease is we could not hold together the wisdom in that place. We could not hold together the culture of that place or that region. And that's where the education has to be designed. And education should empower choice. If there is one education that tells us how a village kid can aspire and go to the city, we should also have an education system that tells the same kid how to establish a life of abundance right there. So when we don't give them a choice, we are dictating the direction. That's the only path. Why not this path? Education should serve the purpose of empowering students with a choice, right? And then they can decide अगर वो they don't want to go to the city and conquer, so be it. You know, migration by choice should be encouraged, but distress migration should be completely culled. So it took us 15 years to build Proto Village as it is right now, and we spent the last 9 years building what we call contextual purpose-based learning.
Actually, it was 12 years if you count my first 3 years of being a guinea pig. My guinea pigging years, as I call it. That was me, and I was the guinea pig of this model. And so, if we were to go into.
Yeah,
Okay, so now that we've made my father sit. So, if we were all to go into a classroom right now, the most likely thing is I'd be on that side of the table and you guys would be here. So let me show you what that side looked like for me. So I'm going to take you through my shoes of what it was to be a learner in this model. So my learning journey. So let me start by giving you a view of what my day looked like when I was 13 or 12. So I used to get up at 5 in the morning, early I know, but I used to like it. Used to go for a run, do some physical exercise, and then we used to sit in a circle. We used to talk about 4 things in that circle. The entire community used to sit in one circle, and we talk about how's my body feeling? Am I fine? Dusra, how's my mind? How are my emotions? Am I feeling sad, happy? Is there something I need to talk to someone in this circle? Is there something I need to clarify? And then the third one would be our missions for the day. So usko mission kehte the, and it would be what would I accomplish in that day. And for the kids, it would be missions given by Papa or the older ones in the community. And we'd go in the day and we'd work on those missions. The fourth one would be we had something called Virtue of the Week for the older ones and Word of the Week for the younger ones. So Virtue of the Week used to be honesty. I'll work on being honest this week. I felt last week I lied a lot, so this week I'll double down on it. We always say triple down on your strengths, but hum triple down on your weaknesses. Work on what you need to work on. So we used to have a Word of the Week or Virtue of the Week. Bache used to work on something like saying please. So that's why we used to call it word. And first of the day before it got very hot, Andhra was hot, like very hot, 45 degrees easy during summers. So during the morning times, we used to go and we used to work on our missions. And so mission में there's 2 parts. एक था कि objective, कि you have to accomplish this, and दूसरा था कि it's time bound. So a mission could be, for example, there were shepherds who used to come. उसके पास water bottles थे, and when they take it out, we all know that if you leave it in the sun, the water gets heated up and carcinogenic, and it's very bad for health. So we were given the mission key, design a water bottle that was thermally stable, which made them have comfortable drinking water. So that was the objective, and time bound pita, we can't be like, हाँ 10 साल में करता हूँ मैं. You know, they need the water right then. So there was objective and there was time bound, and we used to go after these missions. So this formed something called the virtuous cycle. In this whole scenario, I never had a thing कि मुझे सुबह उठ के ये फाटा I have to finish. I have to go learn algebra आज. I have to do this in math. There was nothing of the sort. It was more of how do I go and serve my community. So earlier I'd heard of this saying from Swami Vivekananda कि to serve man is to serve God. I never really understood it, and now I've come up with my own interpretation of it. To serve man, basically anything that's living and that makes our life possible is to serve God. And I never understood कि क्यों serve करना है. Like when you tell a kid you have to do service, it's immediately you get a sort of negative connotation कि service है. But the moment I realized was when I go to that shepherd कि I've done this, मैंने ये bottle बनाया. He has that cold water and he comes tells me, thank you, I had cold water today. I'm very happy. And that the most important part and the most joyful part, the joy of service. मैंने ये कर पाया मेरे community के लिए. While doing that, I learned about thermal physics. I learned about mensuration. I learned about volume. All those happened. But the thing that made me want to go and do more was that joy of service. So, that was me. Concepts क्या होता है? Absolutely no clue. Chashma bhi same. Then missions were given in the morning. In order to do that, so now you had a purpose ki today I'm going to do this. Then you come to learning for what all you need to do to do that mission better. And to us, we never knew that we're learning all these concepts and this is what the curriculum is. But all we knew, and that was sort of indoctrined by Papa and the other people at the community, but all we knew is we need to learn this to do this better. And then by that we contribute to our community, we get validation from them, and that validation leads to motivation, which makes us say, it doesn't matter what I have to learn. If I can help this person, I'll go learn it. So your whole thing of that becomes too difficult gets removed, and you go from the motivation of I get that joy of being able to help someone out, to be able to serve. So, in a nutshell, intentional living breeds purpose. So if you're intentionally going out and achieving something, you have a purpose to it. Purpose leads to learning and service. Service leads to joy. Now we say the joy of like when I first got my cycle, I was happy. But like the joy when I see someone else benefit and the joy of service, it's completely different. It's not at all the same. And that's when I actually understood what it means to say service to man is service to God. So it's something completely whole. And service provides joy, and joy drives that virtuous cycle of constant mission, purpose, learning, contribution, validation, and motivation. So, before that, when I was around 15, they told me कि अभी you're around 10th grade, you have to write exam. And they बोला हाँ, exam, that's how we all assess ourselves in the current world as it is. I'll go give my exam. Or I was like, how do I go about this? And so I just started looking for the most open and so CBSE and ICSE obviously did not allow open schooling. There were a couple of alternate options for open schooling such as NIOS, and I picked IGCSE, which was said to be the hardest. So I was like, chalo ye karte hain. And I'd say I did fairly well in my exams.
By fairly well, what he means is a series of A stars in IGCSE with no preparation, never sitting in a classroom and all that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 10 years, and I was talking to my friends exam ke baad ki, they were like, so much I prepared, itna bada, full year bro, I had so much notes, look at my notes, this and that, I spent tuition, I did this, I did that, how do you think you did? And I was like, ye kya hai? I went, I did my missions, and then I learned while doing it. 1 month before the exam, because I need to know how to do the exam, my exam was in Feb. Jan, 1 month I spent on learning how to answer the questions in the exam format. But apart from that, I never spent any time ki, I have to learn this, I have to do this, I have to do this. And so they were talking to me and they were like, I wish I could learn like that. I wish I did that instead. And that's what led to the motivation of me wanting to replicate this model for everyone to use. So that's how I got into education after my 10th grade. Up till then I was just a part and constantly just contributing. But I was never focused on doing the education model itself. 11th and 12th, I was a little hard pressed on time because, well, exams did exist. So I couldn't exactly focus a lot on the model, but now I've taken a gap year and I'm working entirely on it. So I want to start by running you through how the framework looks. And so the first thing was, in order to design something, you need to understand what it is you're designing or what it is you're trying to fix. If you go about saying, "Mujhe cycle banana hai," without knowing what a cycle is, you'd lead to nowhere. So we need to define what it is that we're trying to solve. So together and with the entire team, we decided that this is our design question: how to create a learning focused environment, a conducive environment in villages that will help rural kids leverage their local context to learn academic concepts and to use them as tools to make a difference to their communities. So this was our design question, and this is what started. This is what we started with before going on to the education model. So we call it contextual purpose-based learning, CPBL for short, and we call the school. Earlier we used to call it Maya Bazaar. I'm sure most of you would have seen the movie. So we really like that movie too.
That's only Andhra.
Oh, okay. Maybe you have not seen the movie. It's a Telugu movie. But Maya Bazaar magic and a place where it happens. So now we call it the why school, where you question why with regards to everything. And so first, the framework. Okay, so let's imagine a table, an Excel sheet for one, where you have rows and you have columns. So rows may what it is that we're going to learn is what we decided. So in that we had 4 learning journeys. So the first one was self, where from basic physiology to physical, emotional, spiritual, all that encompasses what makes up me and how I interact with others becomes myself. So that's your first learning journey. Your second learning journey is the environment, where you have the natural environment, social environment, political environment, economic environment, and how technology is evolving currently. So, and the third one is expression. So expression, there's 2 parts to it. One is to be able to clearly articulate what I want to say without any confusion to the other person. So if you assume communication as a game of catch and throw, you throw the ball in such a way that they are able to receive it. So that's first part of expression. And the second was what is it that I can do to be able to contribute to the whole. So based on what it is that I have learned, how can I express myself such that I'm contributing more than I'm taking? So those were the 2 aspects of expression. And the final part was just tools. Math, science, whatever you need in order to do the missions, those are your tools. But integral parts of what it is we need to learn. The depth of how much a learner goes into each of these learning journeys comes from their own uniqueness. There's a basic minimum of, to be able to do this mission, I need to know so much. But after that, if I want to go deeper, that's entirely up to me. And so now we have completed the rows. Now the columns.
What is
We
CPBL?
finished the columns. Before
What is
Oh, sorry, the
CPBL? What is
columns now.
CPBL?
Contextual purpose-based learning. So, sorry, this is CPBL is just a shortened form of the framework. And so we finished the 4 columns on top. And now, if anyone still remembers so long ago when we talked about 9 basic needs, that gives us the context as to why we should learn. So we get the 9 rows, where we're talking about the 9 foundational human needs as a community for us to survive. So we get food security, water security, shelter, clothing, healthcare, energy, connectivity, livelihood, and disaster management. So while per culture, per context, the activities that encompass achieving resilience in these 9 basic needs change. So like for example, in disaster management, in Anantapur we'll focus on drought. But in Assam they'll focus more on floods. So while the context changes, the basic human needs, the framework remains the same. So we broke it down into around 700 to 750 activities, that if we do all of these, we are self-reliant in our 9 basic needs. And those became the missions. So to ensure that we're covering the syllabus as per required, we mapped out all the academic concepts up to the 10th grade to do all these 700 missions. So by doing all these 700 missions, I end up learning everything I need to know for my 10th grade exam. Exactly how I learned it. So your mission provides the why, where you know कि I get the joy of service once I'm done with it. The concepts provide the how. So they're just tools. They're never